I'm thinking about this, the choices that you made of Manitoba is in Canada
Yes.
and Montana in the States.
Yes.
And if I read this as a kind of Bildungsroman, as a kind of sort of, what do you call that in English?
Well, we don't have the word Bildungsroman in English. So although I studied it in graduate school. Well, I think you would call it, a novel of education.
Yeah.
I think it's what it actually literally means in German.
Yes,
Yes.
it does. But because if you read the European classics in the genre, they would it would be it would be in cities, it would be in towns. And would you say this is a very American version of?
Well, I guess it must be since I wrote it.
Wow, there are Americans who write European novels like Paul Auster.
Yeah, but I would say Paul Auster. I think if you're American, you're always writing an American novel, even if you said it in France, even if you said it in Poland. I just think when I write about Paris, which I have done a lot, it's always about Americans. Fitzgerald did the same thing. Hemingway did the same thing. It's all about Americans sort of navigating around through these places that are not their home. So, but I mean, I would certainly say this is an American novel, though I think I read all of the European novels that I read when I was in university in translation. So I think that there's nothing about it, its Americanness, that would stop in any way somebody who didn't live in America from writing it. I never really know what it means other than just what I have on my driver's license. It means to be an American when it comes to writing. Most of what I learned as a reader to be a writer, I learned from Chekhov. So I don't generally relate very, very intelligently to what the difference is in American literature other than settings and people's names and the language they speak from something else.
But still, to me, it's. I won't insist, but.
Oh, that's okay. No, but you know.
But Bev Parsons, the father, he's been in the army, and he gets. It's like many of those who came back from the army in the late 50s and early 60s, they ended up in places like this.
Yes.
In some kind of base, American base.
Yes.
And so in that way, it's a very exotic history.
Well, it is true. I mean, it takes advantage of the American landmass. That when you're in the service in America, you get shipped over here and you get shipped to the other end of the country and you end up getting out of the service in some place you never knew about. That certainly happens in America. But maybe in Britain it doesn't happen that way, maybe in Sweden it doesn't happen that way, but it certainly happens that way in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it happens like that way in Sweden. I mean, that's really a difference.
I never gave that a moment's thought, that there was anything peculiarly American about that, but maybe I take America in a way so for granted.
Yeah, that's not true. But talking about Chekhov, I just remember a detail that you are telling, a story you're telling in the book, is that Tolstoy moved peasants to Canada.
He did.
Is that true?
He did. He paid thousands of the value of thousands of dollars to take indigent people who had been serfs, because that's what he was, of course, as we know, interested in liberating people like that from his lofty perch. He brought many of them to Canada and just basically transported them there and set them up in life and let them be there. So in that part of western Saskatchewan, there are, in fact, lots of Russian-speaking people still, Russian enclaves, because many of them, as was the case out on the plains in general, many of them didn't survive in the sense that they weren't able to make a go of farming, and some of them went back to Russia, some of them went to the west coast of Canada. Few stayed, but most didn't.
I didn't at all know that story.
Yes,
but
yes,
you also put a Swedish woman up there with her terrible accent. What?
Well, she's been living in the United States, so that her accent, she's been living in an English-speaking environment in Canada, so that her accent becomes terrible. It was actually just a little honorific to an old pal of mine in Stockholm.
He speaks like that?
Huh?
Does he speak like that?
No. But he's Swedish.
Yes, yes. I know what you mean. Why did you call the book Canada?
Well, it's the first thing I wrote on the top of the page back in 1988 when I wrote 20 pages and put them in my refrigerator. So it always stayed in my mind over the subsequent 20 plus years that what I was working on was a story called Canada. And I just lived, although I never looked at those 20 pages again or got them out, or I've never looked at them to this day, I just got it sort of stamped in my brain that this was called Canada. That said, I could have changed it, obviously, but there, beyond that are some real reasons. One is that I wanted Del to be able to go to a place that turned out to be a good place. I think all of us need in the life that we carry around with us, our mentality, to think that there is a good place for us to go. Canada was that good place for me. I've always found Canada to be an extremely tolerant, restorative, diverse, a good place for me to go when I leave America. So there was that. There was also just the word. You know, for me, putting words on a page often has to do with just liking a word and wanting to put it onto the page. And Canada was, for me, an extremely attractive word. I liked all the A sounds. And I liked all the consonantal C and D sounds. They sort of fitted nicely into my mouth. And I also liked it that Canada is, in metric terms, a dactyl. It goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So whenever I put it on the page, that dactylic rhythm is, for me, very attractive.
A good beat.
It's a good beat. It is. And so all of those things. I mean, I write stories set in Great Falls, Montana, because I see Great Falls, Montana on the page, and my heart kind of speeds up a little bit. So whenever I see Canada on the page, I get a little frisson. I think, good, yes, good, there's a word. Because being dyslexic as I am, over the course of life, I've been able to traffic considerably in those qualities of language which are not just cognitive qualities. Reading so slowly and absorbing words so slowly, I've been able to appreciate those qualities in language that are, say, poetical in a sense. So I'm always interested in those aspects of words when I choose them to put them on the page. Much of writing novels is choosing this word to follow that word, to follow that word, to follow that word.
And I think it's this quality of yours of feeling the materialistness, the materiality of the word and what it evokes, because we must say something also about the effect your books have on the reader, because this poetic language, you really don't, you're not a writer who would drop names, or you would have to find out what are the intertexts here. I mean, you write out Emerson if you want us to read Emerson, but you're not that kind of writer. But this poetic language, it really makes me cry, at least. Normally, I only cry when I see bad films.
And you just cry for the loss of time.
But here, it goes directly to the heart in a way.
Certainly my goal.
It is your goal.
Absolutely. I mean, I want you to have an experience from a book of mine that you can't have sitting at your breakfast table looking at the newspaper. I mean, I want, I have a definition of what literature is. It comes from F.R. Leavis, and it is that literature is the supreme means by which we renew our sensuous and emotional life and learn a new awareness. And that's what I want to do in writing books. So when I was reading this book to my wife aloud, which is what I do with all of my books, we got to the last page, and I just convulsed in tears, and partly because it's what happens, but it's partly just because of the effort involved in getting for me to get there. So I'm really trying to, I'm trying to turn it up in these books as much as I possibly can. And I want something to happen to make your life change.
And you certainly do.
Well, I do my best. Because books do that for me.
Yeah.
Books do that for me all the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.